Yes, I cocked one off this place in the gully, and the Blyther gathered it.
You're such a dibbly-dabbly.
The name of this song is Today More Than Any Other Day, parts 4 through 43. So open up your textbooks, or a magazine, or a novel. Any kind of reading material will do. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, wow, today, more than any other day, I am excited to feel the milk of human kindness. And today, more than any other day, I am excited to go grocery shopping.
Welcome to the 3% Podcast. This is Chad Post with Open Letter Books, and I'm here with Tom Roberge from New Directions, and today we're going to talk about something. Why don't you introduce it? Because you said you came up with the idea after reading one of Will Evans's blog posts.
Yes. I mean, if you've read any of Will's blog posts, they are very long and digressive.
Like Will.
Like Will. But he was talking, I don't remember how this came up, but I somehow stumbled upon this one particular blog post where he was talking about going to BA and whether it was worth it, and he had mentioned that I don't think BA is worth it, and why we do what we do for BA, we just throw the party and just invite people and blah, 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 and you know, how we've been around for a while and he hasn't, and so he's got all these different perspectives. But he mentioned also that what he likes best about this podcast is when we get into the nitty-gritty of how publishing works and what brings a book to market and how things work and that sort of thing. And I think mainly people like him find it interesting, and maybe, you know, your average educated reader, people who read books like that we publish, find it interesting because they are curious about the process and not just, these are not people who just pick up something at an airport, read it, discard it, and don't ever think about it ever again. So anyway, with that in mind, and with the fact that László won the second consecutive Best Translated Book Award, this time for Sayobo There Below, different translator, I thought, why not talk about what our long history with László is, and the goals, and what we set out to do, and how we go about publishing someone like that. Yeah. And he's a best case scenario, I would say, for a writer like him. Mm-hmm. And I think you do the same thing, and obviously, like Jill Schulman does the same thing in Archipelago, and I assume, Will is as well as probably, has a vision for something like this, which is, staying committed to an author over the long run, and ignoring the bottom line for a little while, and just seeing, believing in somebody and having faith and all of that.
So do you know how you came to the first László Krasznahorkai book that you guys published was The Melancholy of Resistance?
Yes.
How did that come to... this is one of those questions that, I feel like you've been asked a million times, and anyone in publishing has been asked a million times of, how do you find your books? But, literally, how did you find that book?
Well, I should say we have a long history at New Directions. Okay, so should we back up and explain that how most books get published in the major publishing world?
Sure, yeah.
Contemporary author in the U.S. or even overseas finds agent sells book to individual editor at a publishing house. The editor there has to, there are battles within the publishing house to fight for it, when I'm at Penguin, I have to bring it to my boss. I have to explain why I think it'll sell. I have to explain how we think we'll position it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So everything is basically brought through agents. If it's a foreign book, it can be brought by an agent, or the foreign publisher themselves might have the rights. And in some cases, some countries have cultural institutions that do this. The French, I know, the Germans, there are probably some others, Koreans, I think, have it, that bring them to the attention of the U.S. publishers. But they're essentially selling on the same sort of model. They're acting as agents. They're trying to get people interested in buying it.
Right.
We have a long history, partly because we're just poor and can't afford what sort of things agents generally push. Because agents obviously are doing it for the money, and they're not going to spend a lot of time selling books for $5,000. They get 10% of that. It's hardly worth their time. So what we have a long history of doing is sort of relying on our existing authors, because they tend to be very smart, well-read people. They will recommend things. And this goes way, way back to James Laughlin having been in college with Ezra Pound. You know, like, we started publishing Ezra Pound because Laughlin knew him. And then Ezra, being Ezra, read everything and, you know, recommended things. And then, you know, it gets the ball rolling and so on and so forth. Right. So we have a long history of that. And a lot of our writers that we publish come from either translators that we have very long-standing relationships with or writers that we have long-standing relationships with. And they'll say, oh, you know, like, you know, the Bolaño thing, it came from, what's his name? Francisco Goldman.
Oh, right.
But he, I mean, obviously we don't publish him, but he's somebody that, you know, we like and we're friends with. And so that's how, you know, it came that way. It didn't come from an agent. So, all of that said, László came to us because of Susan Sontag.
Right.
Who was friends with Barbara. And Barbara tells a wonderful story of how when she was trying to convince New Directions to publish László, she had tried to drag Barbara to a screening of Satan Tango's, the film version of Satan Tango, which is 9 hours long.
Right.
On like a sunny afternoon in May or something like that. And Barbara basically blew her off. That Sontag, she was known to be very moody, was very upset with her for that. And like wouldn't talk to her for a week and all of that. Anyway, so yes, Susan Sontag had read László's work in German.
Okay.
And knew them that way. And of course he was big news in Germany, you know, since Satan Tango was published in the 80s.
Yeah.
And he lives there part of the year and all of that sort of stuff. So he was big, and Susan obviously had heard about him, and she loved him, and so she really pushed. And finally, in I'm not sure exactly what year we signed up the first book, but I know that the first book we published was Melancholy Resistance in hardcover in the year 2000.
It was that long ago.
Yeah, I was in the Peace Corps at the time.
Oh, really? I remember getting the galley at Delkey, which was, it wasn't a galley. You guys didn't do, or for whatever reason, we didn't get a normal galley, which is like, for anyone who doesn't know, like the book, but without the cover generally, and just like the bibliographic information is on there. Sometimes it will have the cover, but it's like shittily produced generally. The one that we got was made at Kinko's and bound, like a bound, like those spiral bind sort of like thing that you would envision from like a high school art project or high school like thesis project that you had to do.
Yes. Well, I mean, I've gotten some of those. I mean,
I've gotten some of those still too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just read the Infatuations that way. So.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was 2000. I'm looking at the sales here. Net lifetime sales, Melancholy Resistance in a hardcover.
670?
481 copies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
The initial ship was only 769 copies.
Man.
Yeah.
That's I would have thought that would be just naturally higher because of New Directions being New Directions.
Well, okay. Well, that was the hardcover. And then
yeah.
Us being New Directions, we sort of take our time on paperbacks. You know, the general rule is between 10 months and a year, we just kind of wait until things run out.
Right.
Unless sort of pressured. So we didn't do the paperback for another 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Lifetime sales on that are approaching 9,000.
Holy shit. Okay.
But I will say, about 3/4 of that has been since we published Satan Tango in hardcover.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So, yeah.
Well, James Wood profile, and then clearly Satan Tango was the book that really brought him into the spotlight, you know?
Right. So War and War was the second one, but that probably didn't do that well either.
No, War and War, yes. War and War was the second one, which we did paperback original.
Right.
We didn't do the hardcover this time. That was in March of 2006. That has only sold 5,000. And again, most of that is, you know, recent.
Post James Wood. The James Wood profile, when did that take place? Do you know?
That would have been like April or May of 2012.
Oh, okay. So it was very
It
recent.
was right after Satan Tango was published.
Okay.
Right after. Or right before? It was right before Satan Tango was
And
published.
that had a huge, like that obviously had a huge, July 4th, 2011, apparently.
Oh, really? Yeah. It was before Satan Tango, I guess. Yeah, it basically drained the warehouse of Melancholy Resistance and War and War, and the few copies of Animal Inside we had left
Wow.
were clearly gone. So anyway, yes, then we did War and War, and then another several years passed, and we did Animal Inside, which was the sort of chapbook-sized stapled spine sort of art project that we did with the Kaye series. Right. We no longer print that. We did one printing, 1,500 copies, and that was it.
Huh.
So
that's a really pretty book.
It is really pretty, and it is still in print. The Kaye series took the rights, and they are now on
Chicago, I believe.
Chicago, yes, University of Chicago Press or whatever. Their distribution wing is now handling that. And by the way, there are rumors. So please don't quote any. This is fact. There are rumors that someone, and I'm forgetting who, because it's not my world. Someone wants to make an opera out of Animal Inside.
Really?
Yeah.
That seems kind of wild. I mean, that's a short book, but I suppose that would make sense.
It's very dense.
Yeah.
I would say there are a lot of words per page and a lot of ideas swirling about. I can see how you can make a really dark, moody opera out of it, but anyway, that may or may not come to pass. We'll see. And then finally, we finally started cashing in on our long wait and investment with László when Satan Tango was published in 2012. Now, I should say, we probably signed this book up along with Melancholy of Resistance at the same time.
Oh, really?
It took
George it took him that long to translate it.
He was working on it for that long.
Jesus.
So, I don't think it was the plan that it would have been 12 years after we signed it up. It was also the first book that László wrote, so I don't think we thought it'd be the third one that we published. Although, I don't know how you feel about this, but I always talk about this with Kelly, who's at Melville House, Kelly Burdick, when deciding to bring over a foreign writer. It's like, you're not obliged to just start with their first book. You know, start with their best book.
Yeah.
And, try to get people hooked on it that way. You're not beholden to any, linear timeline or anything like that. So
the thing that's tricky about that for me is always figuring out what the best book would be. Like in terms of like, there's the best book by like the one that's like the best like literary artifact, aesthetically most interesting book, but then that's not always the best one for introducing an author to readers either. So there's sometimes like the best one that's like, oh, this will get a good following, and then there's the next book, which is really maybe the highlight or the best work of this person's career, but it probably doesn't have as many readers off the bat.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's tricky. You want something that's, obviously not too challenging, but something that's not, misleading to the rest of the author's body of work. We're in this. We do what we do because we think we know what people will like or what we convince people to give a try to, and that sort of thing. So it's tricky, but you definitely don't want to start with their obscure, unpunctuated book, which
we've done,
which we've done eventually. But you don't want to start with that one.
That was out of the two. I mean, they were written. We're doing 2 books by Matthias Enard. The one that's coming out in November is Street of Thieves, which is basically about a young Moroccan boy who gets thrown out of his family for trying to bang his cousin, and then is involved with like a radical group of Islamicists, and it's a really interesting, fascinating book about the Arab Spring and whatnot, and it's much more readable than Zone, which we published first, which was written back in 2010, and we brought it out shortly thereafter, which is unpunctuated and has like one period in it, essentially at the end. So if we had the choice to do those backwards, we probably should have done them backwards, but whatever.
Yeah, whatever. But
people love books without periods.
Some people. I would not call it it's not a thing that's in high demand.
No.
What else? So yeah, I mean, so that's basically the overview of the timeline of publishing László Krasznahorkai, and I wanted to point out one of those sales numbers from the first two novels and how badly they had done, and yet there was no belief among the staff that we should give up on him.
Right.
We believed even back then this is somebody who's clearly one of the best writers writing anywhere in the world, writing about very universal issues of the world, and with powerful, beautiful language. And that's, basically our mission is to publish those kinds of books. And you can't just publish one, watch it not do very well, and say, you know what, we're doomed, we're never going to make this work. That's
right.
You have to commit to publishing enough of these books to present a body of work, to present a sort of worldview for an author, so that people know how to, take them all collectively. Like James Wood doesn't do this for one book, he does it for 3 books or 4 books. Like we needed a body for the critics and the reviewers to sort of sift through before, so they could sift through it and then present their case to the reading public to say, hey, here's somebody you should read and here's why.
Right.
And that takes time, unfortunately. It also takes time because of the translation process. It takes time because, we are not the wealthiest publisher in the world. And, these things, you can't just force them all out and throw a bunch of money around and make these things happen overnight. So it's our model. It's very different than, a debut novel gets published at Penguin. It sells 500 copies. There's no chance in hell that writer is getting another book published at Penguin. And if he or she gets published at Random House or somewhere else,
right,
their advance is going to be a quarter of what it was for the first book.
That's what. Yeah. So how long did you work at Penguin?
I was there about 3 years.
Were there any instances of that happening?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you have no idea how many. I mean, just pick up their catalog sometime. I mean, there are just so many books in there that you've never heard of because they never made a splash. And at the time when they were bought, the editors were very excited about them, and everyone was gung ho. And sometimes the books just don't work for whatever reason, and sometimes because they aren't as good as everyone thought they were going to be, and sometimes they just don't manage to catch the eye of their intended market. Maybe the sales reps aren't pushing them hard. I mean, there are a million things that could determine the fate of a book. Not always the quality, but
right.
There are a lot of them that just fail, and Penguin will decide, fuck it, it's not even worth doing paperback.
Yeah,
and it just goes out of print very quickly.
And another question that's not related to that, but how many books do you think New Directions has published because Susan Sontag recommended them?
I'm blanking. There are definitely other authors.
Yeah, I know there's other, like the Baden guy.
Yes.
Leonard.
Oh my. Sipkin.
Yeah.
Definitely came from Susan. Yes. There's somebody else too, and I'm blanking on it.
I feel like it seems like there's like at least a handful, which is there anyone like her anymore that works with you guys?
No, I mean, like I said, Francisco has been...
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
He's the one who recommended the Marnal that we published last year as well.
Right. The best fucking book about Mexico
totally,
City.
Yeah. I mean, they're just Francisco's personality and Susan Sontag's personality.
Way different.
Very different. And I think Francisco operates on a, like it's a very casual sort of recommendation thing.
Right.
Whereas Susan was making a very impassioned, intellectual argument for publishing a certain writer.
Did you know Susan Sontag?
I never met her, no.
I met her once, when I was working at the bookstore in Quailridge Books, which you've been to. She came and read from In America there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a billion years ago, obviously. And I met her there, but that was she was giving a reading. It wasn't anything more than that. But my impression is always that she sort of believed that literature, in the way that what you say, that she made an impassioned speech for why publishing something would be important, that there was this literary flow and that this was an important thing, that these books were made available to people. Yes. And I think Francisco also believes in literature, but he is much more of a offhanded, funny, I don't know, he's just different. Totally.
He believes
different.
in the pleasure of it.
Yeah, he's more, yeah, exactly.
I think is what it is. And which is not to say that, he is frivolous or anything like that. It's just, I think he really, in addition to wanting to read beautiful, well-written things that approach interesting ideas, he also really wants to have a good time doing it. He wants to be, he wants there to be some, lively passion coming out of it. And that's what I think, when he brings us books, or recommends things, I think that's, the spirit of it, as opposed to Susan.
Yeah.
So you didn't find her difficult?
No, she was there for her reading. So she walked around and looked at the books for a little while, and I forget, there was someone that she talked about that we had at the store, one of the books, whatever author it was, that she was excited that we carried that title. But then she gave her reading and then she was gone. It was pretty quick and easy.
Yeah.
But did she have a reputation for that?
Yeah, she had a reputation for just being, she did not suffer fools, I think is the term.
This is why I didn't talk to her, probably. I could have stayed away. Nope, that wouldn't be good. Oh, man. So yeah, so you have, if Francisco Goldman is sort of stepping in, do you think there's going to be other people like them?
I don't know.
I was thinking about this. This is I'm going to digress and give a little background to that. I read the Hot House book that Boris wrote about FSG recently because I had my students, the 2 grad students in my publishing class, read that and gave a presentation on it for their extra credit, literally. But they have to have one extra. They have to have a 5-credit class instead of a 4-credit class, so they had to do extra work, and that was the main thing that they did. And and I read it, and it was really interesting for a number of reasons. But the idea that there's no one that's going to be like Strauss, Roger Strauss in particular. I can't imagine someone running a publishing company like him in today's world or in the future being similar in that way. I think there's New Directions is maybe will be, but someone who's doing things out of this weird passion and this sort of rebelliousness. There are different people who kind of fit bits of his personality, but that time where FSG became so big and such a huge independent press, I think that's really hard to replicate in today's economy, in today's business world, in today's cultural world. Essentially, we either tend to be fairly small or you're very corporate. And but his personality too is just one that struck me as I don't think this kind of guy is going to be around. And they hit his whole long thing with Susan Sontag as well. And that's why I was thinking just now, is there anyone that's going to be like that 20 years from now?
I don't know. It's hard to. Are there writers out there who are Lethem does this, doesn't he? I mean,
to some degree, yeah. And his sister is into. She translates from Catalan and Spanish, so
right. And Keith does this. Keith Gessen.
Oh yeah.
The Russian. I mean, he's out there sort of, looking for things that are in need of attention from other parts of the world, Russia particularly.
Right.
There are people doing it, don't you think? I
think so. I think it's just a different time. I don't know that there's the same sort of awe and respect, I guess. I don't know what it is. Like there seems different that like that Susan Sontag could go to someone, be it Barbara or Roger Strauss, and be like, you need to publish this book because, or like the idea that he gave her The Name of the Rose, the Umberto Eco book, and then she was like, no, this is crap. Like, this is a terrible book. Don't publish it. And, and so he didn't publish it. That kind of thing doesn't seem possible to me.
I agree that it doesn't seem possible in that way.
Right.
The way it's happening these days seems that the writers who are using their existing clout or influence, if you will, seem to like to take ownership of the things they discover and the writers they discover.
Yeah.
And that, to be fair, that might be the publishers themselves saying, hey, yeah, Jonathan, this is great, but we're not going to sell any copies unless you get front and center and help us sell copies.
Right.
But the idea that, Lethem is going to very quietly go to FSG and suggest that they publish something and then completely step aside and maybe just give a blurb, I don't know. Is that going to happen? I don't know that that's going to happen. You're right.
Yeah. It's also, like, Lethem's really devoted to, like, especially, like, NYRB type of books where things that were around that are now out of print that helped rediscover or relaunch, essentially. But I don't know. Keith is a good example of someone who's connected to, like, international literature in that way. But Susan Sontag was, like, really connected. Like, seemed to, like, know more than any other person. And I don't know if there's anyone that's quite like that.
No, I can't really think of anyone. It's a shame.
It really is. It'd be great.
It's got to be happening, and maybe we just don't know about it. Let's. But I don't know.
Someone listening to this probably can name like 3 people, and you're like, oh yeah, obviously. Hopefully.
Anyway.
So, I have a digression story for you. That this is. Oh, I don't know if I can include this entirely in here.
Wow. Well, that was a digression that probably needs to be cut. But
Nate can do his beepy thing.
Yeah.
But I had to tell you because it's up on my screen right now as you were talking. It's like, oh, you need to know this.
I'm still looking at sales numbers for Satan Tango.
How did Satan Tango do in comparison? Like when it first, like the first, obviously the James Wood thing had happened already. But how many copies did it sell in its first like 3 months?
Well, hardcover total sales were almost 5,000. Let's see if I can get some.
That's solid.
That's not bad.
I think that there was one point in time, like I think I texted this to you when Will, to go back to Will Evans and who's the whatever, the person who kind of inspired this whole conversation. There was a time when he was here that he thought he was talking about that book and how it'd been on NPR and everything, and it probably sold like 15 to 20,000 copies. It's like, there's no way. And I remember texting you, and like you're like, yeah, it's not even close.
Yeah. So yeah, it got up close to 5,000 in hardcover. We're up to about 3,000 in paperback, and paperback's been out for like 4 months.
Oh yeah, that's not that bad.
However, shockingly, because I did not know what to make of this book, Seobo, we've shipped about 5,000 of that.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that.
It's a very difficult book, but, people seem to like it.
I still haven't started reading that. Like, I brought it, I keep bringing it around places, but right now I started reading the Bohumil Hrabal book, Harlequin's Millions instead, but I want to read that, but I haven't sat down to do it yet.
I'm reading, and I swear to everyone that this is the truth, the last book by Roberto Bolaño.
Oh. Is it the Little Lumpen novella?
Yes, exactly. It's good. It's very good. It's the Italian brother and sister who are orphaned and have to, fend for themselves. And that's about as far as I've gotten, and I don't want to give too much away. So.
And that is the last book that you guys are doing by him?
It's the last book that he wrote. He wrote it before he died. So there's that. And I believe, yes, it'll be the last book that anyone publishes by L&aacute.
Holy shit. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, but it's one of these things that's like saying it's the last undiscovered tribe. It's like, well, you don't know because they're undiscovered. You know, it's like...
I'm sure Wiley has like 4 new manuscripts that he's waiting to like bring out of nowhere. Did you read Woes of the True Policeman?
Yes.
Did you like that?
I loved it.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you not like it?
I thought it was fine. It really did feel like a test run for like 2666 though.
Well, it's part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it did tie in very much.
Yeah.
I thought the Third Reich was better, but...
The Third Reich I haven't read.
I really like that one.
Okay. There's so many books of his that came out all at once. You know, I'm going to tie this into, this is not a true digression because it's going to tie back into something we talked about last week. But there is, with Nazi literature in the Americas, there's a book by Stanislaw Lem who I mentioned last week as my rave thing, he wrote a book that's all made up science fiction books that were never in existence as well. Yeah. Like a similar sort of like thing, maybe a little bit different, but like the same sort of concept. That's it. That's my whole digression.
Okay. I didn't know anything about that, but
I'm curious to read it. They don't have it in our library here. Our library is shitty. Like our university library is so shitty. Like I was looking at the Bohemo Harabal books yesterday to see which other ones they had in just here on campus, because there's it keeps referencing in Harlequin's Millions the Town Where Time Stood Still, which I know is a book of his that was published by I don't know whomever. I want to say it's like Houghton Mifflin years and years and years ago, and it's 2 novellas, and we don't have that. Instead, they just have like the 3 recent books from Northwestern. Like that's it. Like why that? Like why not? Why forget it?
Yeah, that is bizarre.
It's just like you picked the wrong ones. Like those are fine, but like really. Anyway, so you're doing rants this week, huh? Or raves? Your raves.
Well, I have something to get to before that I feel we are obliged to discuss.
Okay.
I might be blindsiding you with this, but do we have anything else to say about legacy publishing, this long-term publishing? The only thing that I think might bear mentioning is that we for us it is a true commitment, a long-term investment to do this kind of thing, because we are not a nonprofit. We do have to make money in the meantime while we're waiting for László to catch on. But maybe this is my naivete of the nonprofit world, is that, you know, you can afford to just publish things and that sales don't matter. And I know that that's not true.
Right.
But you do have a bit more leeway in terms of how many books you can publish without, you know, turning a profit on any of them.
Yes and no. It's not that different from, because you guys get money from the trust, right?
No.
Not anymore?
No, never. There was never a trust.
I thought there was a certain amount of protection.
No, there is a fund for emergencies that we don't ever use.
Okay, yeah. It's the same as if that were a trust. That you can't lose money. You have to break even. You have to make money as a nonprofit, otherwise no one will fund you. So if you don't make money every year, or have like break even plus like, you know, a little bit of extra money, no one's going to give you any donations at all. But you can get donations. So like on any given book, like we have 5 books this year that are funded by the National Endowment for the Arts. So we have $50,000 from them, essentially $10,000 for each one of those books, so that if the sales don't break even, that at least we have that $10,000 there for that book. So it's not that much different. The difference is that you can do books that with funding that won't necessarily break even, and there's not anyone giving you pressure to make a shitload of money.
Right.
So it's not that, because you guys don't have that either, because you don't have any shareholders.
Well, no, but
you need to make. I mean, you want to make money, clearly, but you don't have anyone saying like
go out of business.
Well, yeah. No, you need to like break even. But I'm saying like in the contrast to like Random House saying, like, you only made $128 million last year profit, we're going to fire you. You don't have anyone saying that as, like, your board. No one's going to fire Barbara if, like, you only make $1 million or something of profit in contrast to, like, what their expectations were on Wall Street. Like, that part of it is gone. So it's not that dissimilar, except that you don't have any foreign, or you don't have the national government and state government giving you guys money. But you guys do get grants from, like, the German Book Office and places like that, too, for your translations.
Not really.
You do sometimes, I think.
Like, very rarely.
Yeah, we do with some of the books, but not all of them either.
I mean, it's actually quite a rare thing for us. It's usually not worth the hassle, to be honest.
Really? I thought. Well, you guys didn't you get something for one of the Russian books from the Prokhorov Foundation recently?
No, we ended up not getting that money.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, it was for the Sipkin, because they're a pain in the ass. That's why.
They gave us a very nice grant for, like, my rant, actually. So, like, we'll tie that together.
Anyway, I'm sure there are many more things we could talk about in terms of this.
Oh, no, I did have one more question for the Krasznahorkai thing. Do you guys have any... So you're committed to publishing him long term. This is like the crux of the what you've been describing so far. Now, by contrast, is he committed to you guys long term?
Yes.
And does he have new books that you guys are planning on publishing, or is it when he comes out with a new book you're going to bring it out then? Or is there anything left from him that you're planning on publishing?
10 books that have been translated, yeah. Because he wrote Satan Tango 25 years ago, 27 years ago at this point, and he's been writing books almost every year.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any of those signed on already?
We have 2 in the works, and don't ask me the names, but there are 2 in the works, I think, from the 2 translators.
So I think that's worthwhile to people listening too, to know that, like, it's not just you guys on the one side and someone who's like, oh yeah, this is great, but now that I'm popular, I'm moving on to, like, where I can make $1 million advances.
Right, which happens.
Does happen.
We lost Bolaño, we lost Javier Marias, but no, László loves us. Remind me to email you the photograph of me, you, and László.
Oh, yeah, we'll put that up for this.
So people can see what we all look like, so I am no longer at an event when you are not there yet, mistaken for you.
That was really funny. It's also, for anyone listening, this is a photo of Tom without a beard.
Yeah, I didn't realize I had to tell the world that I had shaved my beard.
No, I think we mentioned it on the last podcast, but there was that one photo of you, because you had made that noise with your beard on the on the cord.
Right.
Yeah, so we had that picture up of you on one of the podcast posts.
Of deep interest to the world, I'm sure. All right, so my little bit of news that we have to address that I went for a run this morning, and I come back, and I'm reading the news on Gawker right before we were set to do this podcast. And the top story, and I'm just going to read the headline here from Gawker, Chipotle Cups to publish new writing from Saunders, Morrison, Gladwell.
I just saw that, too.
Okay. So apparently, in an interview with Vanity Fair, Jonathan Safran Foer, who came up with the idea while eating I'm quoting here from Gawker, came up with the idea while eating a burrito after he'd forgotten to bring a book or his phone to read. Quote, I really just wanted to die with frustration. End quote. So he wrote to Steve Ells, Chipotle CEO. He sent the following email, and this really should just sum it all up. I said, this is from the Vanity Fair piece. This is Forward talking. I said, I bet a shitload of people go into your restaurants every day, and I bet some of them have very similar experiences. And if they didn't have the negative experience, they could have a positive experience if they had access to some kind of interesting text, Forward called. And unlike McDonald's, it's not like they're selling their services to the highest bidder. They had nothing on their bags. So I said, wouldn't it be cool to just put some interesting stuff on it? Get really high-quality writers of different kinds, creating text of different kinds that you just give to your customers as a service.
Oh, my God. What do you think of that, Tom?
Well, okay, it's not so bad, but then he's like, we're doing these people a service because they don't have access to, what does he say? Said I wouldn't have done it if we're another company like McDonald's. But what interests me is 800,000 Americans of extremely diverse backgrounds have access to good writing. I think a lot of these people don't have access to libraries or bookstores.
Whoa.
Which, it's like, wait, what? They can go to Chipotle, but they don't have libraries or bookstores? It's just a very...
At least libraries. They all have libraries.
Or cell phones.
Or cell phones.
Anyway.
Or Amazon.
Or... whatever.
Like... There's something felt very democratic and good about this. I don't like Chipotle. Like
I've never had Chipotle. I don't eat fast food. So.
I've been there once and I thought it sucked.
And I don't mean to be a food snob by saying I don't eat fast food, but I really have not had fast food in like 15 years. When I went to the Peace Corps, they don't have fast food in Madagascar. So I just stopped eating it and was always afraid that I'd get deathly ill if I ate it again. And there you go.
Wasn't there something like this before with was it like Starbucks? No. That had like quotes from people.
I don't know. I feel
like I'm looking at the Vanity Fair piece and it has like some of their stories. All their stories are on here.
Yeah, I mean, is this a bad thing? No. But is it the greatest thing to ever exist ever? No.
Jonathan Safran Foer saves the world.
So, okay, back around. You were asking if there was someone like Susan Sontag.
Jonathan Safran Foer putting.
We have Jonathan
stories.
Safran Foer putting very short stories on Chipotle packaging. So there you go. So this is on a par with Susan Sontag recommending Leonid Sipkin or László Krasznahorkai, I would think.
That's what kind of hits at like the sadness for me of this. Like whatever, there's stories on fucking cups now at Chipotle. Like great, who whatever. But like the fact that like this is something that's touted as being good, or that he thinks of it as being a good thing, so that some corporation can use it to get better PR for themselves, so they can make more money off of fat Americans, is just fucked up. Like I feel like that's the U.S. in a nutshell. Is like you have Susan Sontag publishing obscure Hungarian authors because somehow reading them will better your world, or you have Jonathan Safran Foer telling Chipotle to put fucking stories by fucking Malcolm fucking Gladwell on their cups so that people will have something interesting to read when they forget their phone.
Yeah,
like, that's so sad. That's a horrible thing.
Yeah,
like that concept. God, and Malcolm Gladwell. Okay. Fuck it, I'm never going to Chipotle. I've been there once, so it's not like I was a regular customer, but never again. No. Stupid.
Sorry. And you get to continue ranting.
I know, but my rant is like dangerous, and I wanna say this rant. I'm gonna preface this by saying that if any of the people involved in this are listening, I love you all dearly, but this is more for humor than for whatever. But I'm going to rant against academic translators who use footnotes, because we have a poetry book that's coming out that came in with 470 footnotes to it. It's a 100-page book.
That's to a
470
page?
It was 470 fucking footnotes. And what's better is like the editor here, she cut it down to like 238. Like she got rid of the unnecessary ones to 238 footnotes, which the vast majority of which are basically like explanations of like, it'll reference Pushkin, and it's like, Pushkin was an author of like completely unnecessary. Or there's one in particular in which, and this one I apologize also to the translators if they listen to this, but like seriously, you do deserve to hear this. There's one part where there's a joke in the poem, and there's a footnote for the joke explaining why the joke in the translation isn't funny and how it's supposed to be a joke. Because they couldn't translate the joke. So it became like a footnoted joke. But what's better is that all of these people involved also never used Microsoft Word track changes. They emailed each other like a list of like of corrections. So it'd be like the editor of the poetry book was like, on page 7, the M dash needs to be corrected. And then she didn't even copy that and paste it on. All the M dashes were wrong, right? Like that's just whatever. It was wrong throughout. They all needed to be fixed. But she didn't even copy and paste that for each one of the M dashes that need to be fixed, but she did list every single one. So it'd be like, page 27, again, the M dash is wrong. So she rewrote it every single time and sent that Microsoft Word file to the translators, who then wrote back their responses in Microsoft Word, like text thing, not on the actual manuscript. They didn't fix the manuscript at all. There was no touching of that. It was just these emails back and forth that then Kaya had to put into the manuscript. So based on like the fucking 238 footnotes, the fact that no one used like Microsoft Word correctly, or how to do anything with a manuscript, I am burning one copy of this book just for all the suffering that I had to go through in working with this and listening to it and knowing about its existence. One copy of that book is being burnt. That's my rant.
The lesson here is learn how to use the tools of your trade.
Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Rave away.
Okay. You're going to find this rave very uncharacteristically Tom.
Okay.
I think you'll appreciate this.
Good.
I would like to heap some praise on a football team in France called Clermont Foot 63. I don't know why they have a number at the end of their team name. But
I never quite figured that out myself.
who are not, I don't understand the divisions of French soccer. So there's, I assume the equivalent of Premier League is called what? I don't know.
Ligue 1 or Ligue 1.
Ligue 1. Okay,
Yeah.
So Clermont Foot 63 is a second division club in the city of Clermont-Ferrand. I don't know where that is. I assume it's up north, but I could be wrong. When was this? May 7th, last week, announced that they are hiring one Helena Costa, a woman, a Portuguese woman, to be their manager. And manager in soccer and in baseball is the equivalent of coach, head coach in football and basketball and hockey or whatever. This is significant. I mean, I know it's not first division; it is second division,
But you can move up.
You can move up. Teams, yes, QPR, I understand, is playing to move up.
And I hope they lose.
Oh, really? I have a friend who's a big fan, and might be dragging me to the bar at 10 a.m. on Saturday.
It's not this Saturday. It's next Saturday.
I thought it was this Saturday.
No, it's the 24th, and it's actually not at 10 a.m. either. Oh, wait, yeah, it is. It's at 10 a.m. on the 24th.
Oh,
it's the same day as the Champions League championship.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I know way too much about this, but I want Derby County to win because they were the whatever. Go on. Yeah, but anyway, the woman.
Anyway, so Helena Costa has been hired to be the men's coach, this second division team, who she has been the head coach of the women's national teams for Qatar and Iran. She has also managed men's teams in Portugal and in Scotland for Celtic.
Oh, really?
She was a scout for Celtic.
Oh, okay.
And she was what does this say? Benfica, she was which is a club team, not a professional team. It's like being an independent minor league baseball team. I would just like to give them their credit. This is historical, obviously. We in the U.S., I did some digging, and it's very hard to find any women coaching men's teams at any level. There have been a couple women who have been assistant coaches in men's college basketball,
right.
And for big schools, actually. Kentucky
really?
had a female assistant coach not too long ago. But, there are a lot of pro teams in this country, and none of them have any women coaching in any way, shape, or form. And it's a real shame.
That's pretty amazing. So not only that happened like a week ago, right? So she's like the first female coach of a professional team
in any of the top two leagues in all of Europe.
Right. And then a couple of days later, we had the first openly gay NFL player drafted too.
Yes, which look, I mean, they obviously deserve some credit too. The St. Louis Rams drafted Michael Sam with 8 picks to go, and they appear to be doing everything they can to confront the issue and all the media and everything around it head on and embrace it and be very good and try to make things as smooth and easy and as comfortable for him, but at the same time just treat him like any other player in a locker room, and it seems like the ideal approach, and I think he landed in a good spot. I had high hopes that the Jets would draft him, if only because he seems to be a player who needs some development, who's kind of at a weird. He played a position in college that doesn't translate to the pros very well, just because of size and speed and defensive scheming and things like that. And we, the Jets, have like I call him a defensive whisperer. He's very good with defensive players, even though he's the head coach. But he used to be a defensive coach. He can coach anyone up, anyone. And I was really hoping he would draft Sam and make him a good player for us. But he went a couple picks later to the Rams, and all is good in the world. And to all the Twitter idiots who complained about seeing Michael Sam kiss his boyfriend on TV, you are just the scum of the earth, and I hope you get publicly shamed forever.
Well done. Way to take it from a rave to a rant, too.
Well, look, those people deserve it. They do. And it's one thing to sit in your living room in your own home and to watch that and have a sort of reaction and perhaps be a little bit uncomfortable with watching that. Mm-hmm. That's fine. There are those people. I get it. For whatever reason, there are always going to be people who have those private thoughts. It is quite another matter to go onto Twitter or Facebook and publicly voice this opinion to the world and not think twice about it, and not think perhaps I should just bite my tongue and not say anything. What is wrong with these people?
So much, so very much.
I mean, are they looking for support? Are they hoping that there are legions of other people out there are going to be like, yeah, right on?
I think so. I think that that's the part of the motivation for people like that is to have, because that they're tweeting it to the world, but they also feel like they're tweeting it to they're like-minded people who will also be like, yeah, you're totally right. Fuck it. We'll retweet that. We'll favorite it.
But someone else is afraid to say or something?
Yeah.
It's very strange.
Those people are awful. They're just the worst. But since you brought up football and soccer, and as a promise to Stefan Tobler, who said that anytime that I'm going to talk about soccer, I should just talk about cricket instead, I've looked up a glossary of cricket terms, and I have to share 2 of these with you. There's a lot, so for future podcasts, this is good material. But have you ever heard of a diamond duck?
Nope.
Apparently, regional usage varies, but it's either a dismissal, usually run out without facing a delivery, or a dismissal for 0 off the first ball of a team's innings. The less common term platinum duck is used interchangeably. Which I have no idea what any of that means.
I was just going to say I lost you. I was hoping that things would get more explained as went on. But.
No, it just doesn't. Diamond duck is a great term, and the other one is dibbly dobbly. Dibbly dobbly is a bowler of limited skill. I love that that's the insult. You're such a dibbly dobbly. I don't even know what to say. But it's fucking great. These words are insane.
The people don't actually use that term.
I hope not. I was going to Google it just to see if anyone, if it shows up, in, whatever, the India Times, because of, some recent cricket match where they're just that guy was a dibbly-dobbly. It's just, it feels like it's something from, 1932.
Yeah.
It's in Urban Dictionary. Oh my god, and it's on ESPN. Where have all the dibbly-dobblies gone? Is the name of an article.
What?
Yep.
We should probably, I don't know anything about cricket.
I spent an entire day with Scott Esposito in a bar, having lunch, trying to figure out fucking cricket. And, like, I came pretty close by the end. Like, I was getting what was happening. I didn't understand how it would end, or, like, the sort of, like, overarching bit of it, but it was, like, it was like an Indian cricket league, too. It happened to be on in Montreal, at this bar, and it's just, like, fascinating, because, like, people are way into it, like, in the stands, and, like, it's so confusing to try and understand what the hell is happening. And why? So
I'm on the glossary of cricket terms page on Wikipedia.
That's what I used, yeah.
Did you see the cartoon up here?
The one at the top, the young cricketer?
So it's a young cricketer. There's an illustration of a young boy who looks to be like 10 years old with an old man sitting in a lawn chair. And the young cricketer says, "Yes, I cocked one off this place in the gully and the blighter gathered it." Father says, "Yes, but how did you get out? Were you caught, stumped, or bowled, or what?"
None of which makes any sense. None of this makes sense. I feel like watching cricket is like foreigners coming to try and understand baseball.
I think baseball is slightly easier. I could be wrong.
I might be wrong too. I think you're right, but like I also like spent a day. No, it was actually like during there's a Bulgarian woman here, Yana Genova, back in maybe 2010, and she was here for 3 weeks, and it was during the playoffs, and we spent one entire playoff series in which I tried to explain baseball to her, and like at the end there was like it got everything like sort of figured out, like how to explain it to her in one particular game, and she was getting it. She understood most of the rules, and then there was like I forget how it ended, but it was like one of those weird plays that you're just like, oh, well, and also this is an exception of like how someone else can get out. Like maybe it was like a drop third strike throw out to first, and she's just like, what the fuck just happened? It's like, yeah, that's another part of it. Like that part is not what you usually end up seeing on most ends of games. Sorry, like got so close. So I can imagine maybe it is more difficult than I think it is. You looking up more cricket terms?
No. I wanted one last thing. I wanted to announce the creation of a email address for the podcast.
Oh, nice.
So that we can have fans, if there are any, who can write us in and tell us, what they think of the podcast and suggest topics and tell us how big of idiots we are and so on and so forth.
Everything that we do wrong.
Yes, exactly.
As you were talking about the Bologna book, I was going to suggest at some point in time, I like the podcast where we've both read a particular book or like the David Peace ones. We should every once in a while do like every month or two, like some podcast and announce in advance where we're going to talk about one particular author or book, so people could join in if they want to.
Sounds good to me. Yes, and that way we have, they can email us in questions and say, "Hey, could you address this in the podcast and things like that."
Right, and like the Bologna one would be a good example or a good option. Anyways, it doesn't come out forever though.
Yes, the email address is 3%podcast at gmail.com. And I will give you the password as well, and we will be checking and replying. And
it's written out 3%, right?
Yes, 3% podcast at
awesome.
gmail.com. And one last thing is Chad, you were in town last weekend with Nate, and I feel like we, after talking to Nate about how much he does for the podcast that I was completely unaware of, I feel like we ought to give him credit where credit is due, and thank you, Nate, for all the hard work producing this podcast and making us sound semi-intelligent.
I like the fact that like he does deserve all the credit, and the fact that he has to spend hours making us sound less stupid.
Yes,
like cutting things out because we sound like idiots.
Yes, this is true, and try even attempting to make us sound funny. This is also an important skill that I did not know he was doing. So, thank you, Nate.
Well done, Nate. Okay, he gonna end the podcast here. I have to tell you one thing. I got an email from yesterday that had been talking to someone at